5:30, so I'll call to order this meeting for Monday, December 9th. Carl, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Remley.
Here.
Ronayne. Lunsman.
Here.
Reif.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bunceness.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Rux.
Here.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Here, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business will be to approve last week's minutes for Monday, December 2nd. Can I get a motion to do that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Olson, or excuse me, Rux, and a second from Olson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next, we've got open forum. I've got one speaker on the agenda who has to speak on new business, so we'll push him to that segment. Next, we'll cover the consent calendar routine option, city business A, B, and C. Does anyone have any issues with any of those things to talk about? Otherwise, I'll get a motion for the passing of the consent calendar.
Second.
Got a motion from Lunsman and a second from Remley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Next, we will move to new business item A, ordinance number 19-12-04, ordinance establishing the number of regular full-time positions and their position titles and fixing the bonds of the city officials and employees for the upcoming year. Possible first reading of the ordinance 19-12-04. Lynn, tell us about that, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't recommend any substantial changes in the city's budget employee numbers from the year 2019 to the year 2020. If you remember, I termed the year 2020 as the period of sales tax adjustment. E-commerce sales weren't in full effect until March 1st of 2019, and at the same time, the Customs Act repealed sales tax on Internet access service effective 7/1/2020. So in both cases, we won't even have a full calendar year for two of our primary revenue sources. We don't really know what's going to happen, and so I thought it would be best to be on the conservative side, and so for the most part, we didn't handle any additional positions.
Move approval.
Second.
Sounds good. So I've got a motion from Olson and a second from Johnson. Does anyone have
Bunceness.
motion from Rux and a
No,
second?
Bunceness.
Oh, man, I'm just... Your voices today, I guess. Sorry about that. You got something in your mouth. I can see it. It's disguising you over there. Motion from Bunceness and a second from Johnson. Does anyone have any questions for Lynn before we take a vote on this first reading?
Travis, did you want me to talk about this, or do you want to wait?
You know, I just didn't understand what that meant. I guess your description was somewhat sufficient. So, Ron, would you explain to us? I was just questioning that.
The mayor had earlier today had asked a question about the language right at the end of the ordinance dealing with the bonds for city employees and officers. There's a provision there that says, including the bond of the mayor and council in the sum of $5,000. We are not sure what the authority is for that. I'm not saying that it's wrong to have it in there. We just haven't confirmed it. We haven't found any statutory requirement for it yet. There is a requirement that our city finance officer have a bond, and certain appointed officers have bonds. But we are looking to make sure that that is a requirement. I will tell you right now that it looks like that's part of a general blanket policy that the city is part of. There would be no additional cost to including the mayor and the council, but if I can find out some more, I will provide that to you next week.
Sure. In big picture, the reason why any employee would have a bond.
It's essentially employee dishonesty, official dishonesty, and it can activate, in traditional parlance, what would be your Public Officials Act or employees in errors and omissions policy, that kind of coverage. Bond is a separate deal where a surety stands in place to pay up to $5,000 in the case of the bond in the event of a theft from a public official. Again, because of the elected officials and those municipal elected officials, I'm not sure that bond is a requirement for you folks, but I can tell you at this point that there does not appear to be any additional cost to have it, And so I don't have any objection to that language being in there at this time.
Sure. Sounds good. I needed some big picture understanding, I guess, without digging much deeper. So thanks for clarifying that for me. Can I get a motion for that was Bunceness, second from Johnson. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got ordinance 19-12-05, ordinance supplementing the 2019 budget for various unanticipated projects, activities, and expenses. Possible first reading of ordinance 19-12-05. Carl, tell us about that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an exercise that we do every time this year to look through all the different budgets and see if there are any overages that need to be addressed and what the reason for the overages are. On the page where the explanation begins, you'll notice at the very top we have water consumption. It's not because of leaky toilets. What that is the water consumption at the various buildings throughout the city that we read the meters at the end of the year, find out how much actual consumption there was. They pay that, show it as an expense in the different departments to the water fund. That money does get transferred back from the water fund to the different departments, so there's no actual cash that stays in one place, but we do need to show that expense so that we can show that this is a cost of doing business. You'll see those throughout the explanation. The next one I wanted to highlight was the expenses for snow removal. Obviously, we all know it's been quite a year for snow removal, and I want to point out that I've got all the current expenses covered, and I, to be on the safe side, put another $450,000 worth of budget in play just in case we have more snow events in December that require snow removal. The big item there is we do not want to be over budget because that's a state statute that requires us to be within budget. So this is really kind of just covering the bases in case we get more snows. It should cover another 3 to 4 snows depending on snow depth. Next, in the Parks and Rec line items, you'll see that we're supplementing for some damage to the flagpole at Wiley Park. It's about $150,000 worth of expense, but $90,000 worth of expense, I think Doug said it was, but he's working on getting, well, he's not anymore, but Parks and Rec is working on donations to try and cover some of that expense. So next, you'll notice in the special sales tax that there's a line item for the NSU capital campaign. That money was budgeted in a different line item, but I wanted to move it to that line item so that in the future, when that shows up, we can track it and know how much that we paid Northern so that we don't overpay them or underpay them. Moving on to the stormwater fund, maintenance on Northeast Levee, I think that's an item that Robin has addressed earlier with the council and kept you up to date. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we were supplementing for that expense. In the ARC bond debt service, the highlight there is that after all the bonds have been paid, December 27th is the last payment for that. There will be a little bit of leftover money in there because that money was provided by the Special Sales Tax Fund. We're going to transfer that money back to the Special Sales Tax Fund. TIF 10 Debt Service Fund and TIF 3 Debt Service Fund. Because those funds have paid off all the project costs and any related bonds, any money that's left after all those payments have been made gets distributed to the different taxing entities, the school district, the city, the county, and the James River Water District. So I wanted to make sure that there was budget in there so when we receive those monies, we can pay it to the different taxing entities. In all the other TIF bond debt service funds, primarily that is to make sure that we have enough budgetary authority for all the revenue that comes in. When I do the budget for these TIF districts, I'm working with some suppositions, some assumptions. Valuations I get from the county, they're all very rock solid, but I never know until January 1st what the mill levy is going to be. So I'm kind of guessing on the mill levy. Well, I was a little too conservative this time, so I have to show budget because we're going to be receiving that revenue, so we need that to make the debt service payments. And that would be most of my explanation, but I'm open for questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Carl? Otherwise, I will get a motion to pass the first reading of this ordinance.
Move to pass first reading. Second.
Got a motion from Johnson and a second from Reif. Any? There's no questions. So, Carl, can I get a roll call vote on that one, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the 2019 budgeted transfers. Possible approval to authorize the Finance Office to perform the 2019 budget transfers between funds as needed to provide for an ordinance 18-0901, and the 2019 annual appropriation ordinance. Carl, tell us about these.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is really just a official action that needs to be taken. All of these transfers were included in the original 2019 appropriation budget, but state statute requires authorization from the council in a separate motion to make these actual transfers.
Move approval. Second.
We've got a motion from Rux and a second from Olson. Does anyone have any questions for Carl? Otherwise, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the addendum to each on-airport rental car lease to extend the term for 1 year. Possible approval of addendum to each of the 3 on-airport rental car agreements extending the lease term for 1 year to December 31st, 2020, and authorize the city manager and transportation director to execute the same after review and approval by the city attorney. So Ron will introduce that, and then we've got a guest here that is going to be speaking on behalf of Enterprise. If you'd like to make your way to the podium there, then we'll be able to hear you when you speak, but we'll start off by having Ron tell us about the existing agreement and lease.
Thank you, Mayor. The Aberdeen Airport currently has 3 on-airport car rental companies that are under contract with them. 2 of those companies, Avis and Hertz, operate within the terminal. A third company operates on the property but outside of the terminal. And what we see here is an addendum to each of those to extend each by 1 year. All of them expire at the end of this year. I should start by somewhat confessing to the council that, and to the airport board, as we did last Wednesday, I believe it was, last Thursday, that this was a process that we realized as we looked at it was going to take longer than what we thought. We were we would not be able to complete this after going through the review of the leases and any requests for proposals by the end of this year. And that's why we are requesting that each of the leases be extended for 1 year. That will give us sufficient time to put together the various model leases that we would like to see. Also determine what kinds of spaces we're looking at in the on-terminal, in-terminal, and off-terminal spaces. And lastly, give us additional time to put that together in a bid process and make that award without being under the gun to do so. So we're requesting that the council approve each of these 3 addendums.
Ron, are each of them the same existing length of lease that's ending this year?
2 of the leases were 16-year leases that ended this year. The lease to Mark Haven of Aberdeen Flying Service, that was actually a 15-year lease, and but they all were timed to end at the end of this year. So we're extending each of the leases for 1 additional year.
Sounds good. And Ben, while you're here, why don't you tell us a little bit about your concerns from Enterprise Rentals perspective?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate the council allowing me to speak on behalf of Enterprise this evening. In relation to what the city attorney was saying, we had heard that this agenda item was going to be on the city council meeting tonight. And for Enterprise, I would just like to sit here and tell you that we would like to formally express our interest in the opportunity to be able to operate an on-site rental counter at the Aberdeen Regional Airport. We have in the past formally expressed this interest as well, and just wanted to sit here tonight and reiterate that interest once again. We would really love the opportunity to be able to service the citizens of Aberdeen and the folks who do fly into the airport. As a family-run company, we've been in business for 60 years. We're successful now. We're the largest rental car company in the industry, and that's because we've been the best at providing a premium service experience for our 60 years. And once again, we just really like the opportunity to be part of the bid process because we'd really like to, again, have the opportunity to help the citizens of Aberdeen out.
And so now you're currently off-site. Where are you guys located?
We are currently not in the Aberdeen market at all.
Got it. And so in terms of the agreements, they would lock both Avis and Hertz into where they're at for the time being.
Just for an additional year, and then that will give us an opportunity. And in fact, Enterprise was mentioned in our last meeting because we were aware of Enterprise's interest, and we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to make that available to any interested company for the on-airport car rental.
And is the primary discussion within the airport board that basically somebody's going to get booted to make space, or is it a way that they could all be shoehorned into the space that's available? It's pretty tight quarters.
That would be the conversation that we need to have, we need to have that in a way that's responsible and gives a voice to everybody who might have an interest. But right now, there are only 2 spaces available. It's my understanding that there is no intention to expand that to 3 in terminal, and so that's part of the consideration that we'd have is if we have more than 2 parties interested in 2 spaces, then that'll have to be part of the consideration.
Sure. Councilman Bunceness, you have a question?
Ron, the last time this was brought up, Cody was our transportation director, and I thought under that, first question is, why is this taking so long? Because it has been since Cody's been here. We've been talking about this. Second question is, I think at that time there was a thought of a 3rd counter, and that's where the GSA people are at, and they would have to find another spot, or we have to find a spot for them. So that has changed since then, or
they would like to retain that spot?
Yeah. TSA has indicated they want to retain the spaces that they have. And so the part of the conversation that the airport board will be weighing out is, can the market support a 3rd within that terminal? And that'll take some time to put that together. And then again, no doubt that this conversation had occurred a few years ago, as a matter of fact. And then it was made clear that there was not an appetite at that time on the part of the airport board to move forward. And so what happened here, frankly, it just kind of snuck up on us once we realized how complicated this was going to be, partly because we have both in-terminal and off-terminal on-airport car rental. And it gets kind of complicated, but that we need to actually, I think, end up putting together 2 separate types of proposals.
So, last question. Avis and Hertz, I think I know the answer to Mark Caven, but are those franchises where the local person can own a franchise of those 2? Or how is the ownership set up?
I'm sorry, I don't know that, but I would assume that's the case, that they're both
And
franchises.
is that the case with
all enterprise operations are corporate owned and locally managed.
We did have one of the operators come to the last airport meeting and ask that we put out that RFP as soon as we could, so then they could appropriately order new inventory for the upcoming year. And so we're well aware of the fact that all the organizations need sufficient warning so they can pre-plan for the future.
Yeah, I think there's part of my understanding, and probably some of my concern, and maybe I'm just not informed enough, is that these 3 organizations have to provide their own vehicles, and there is no corporate support for that. Maybe I'm wrong in that, where I'm thinking you just said we probably have corporate support for
Correct.
providing
We do have a lot
vehicles.
of flexibility to be able to move fleet around to meet peak demand.
So, is that how are you going to do that bidding process for those counters when it seems like it's a pretty lopsided process from the get-go. So anyway, some
Ben,
things to discuss in the future.
Perhaps you could answer that question, since none of us know when you're in the industry. Are either Avis, Hertz, or both of them potentially franchise operated?
I am unsure with Hertz. I do know that that the Avis location is a franchisee. Their franchise, our operating group also operates at the Minot Airport, and I know the gentleman who owns the Avis here also owns the Minot location for Avis.
And does anyone else have any questions?
What is the time frame to expect to get this done, knowing that some of these operators will need to be able to plan ahead for inventory? That's not something where we get to them in December and say, hey, what is your time frame to get the request for proposals and the bids for the 2021 year?
We had strongly been encouraged to have this essentially wrapped up by mid-2020.
Okay.
So that's our goal, that we'll work towards that.
Dave?
I think the last time we talked about this, we were provided some financial information regarding the providers already, and I'd like to see that brought to us again, and any information that was provided last time.
We can make it part of the RFP.
And then, Ron, when you referred to on-terminal and off-terminal terminal car rental services, there's currently off-terminal car rental services provided, and where are they?
Aberdeen Flying Service operates under Dollar Thrifty, and they do provide
Through their facility.
off-terminal, on-airport car rental. Yeah.
Ben, anything else to add?
No, once again, I'd just like to reiterate, I certainly appreciate the time, Mr. Mayor and council members, for allowing me to speak this
So
evening.
it seems like, in summary, we'll kind of hopefully be putting together the RFP mid-year for 2021's calendar year, I guess. And if this vote goes through, everyone will kind of stay put for one more year. All right. Can I get a motion for the first reading of this?
Move to approve the addendum.
It's not a first reading, just an addendum whatsoever. Johnson is second from Olson. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Bunceness?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Reif?
Aye.
Lunsman?
Aye.
Remley?
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman?
Aye, motion does carry. Ben, thank you for visiting us
Thank you very
today.
much.
Appreciate your time. Next, we've got payment requests for airport improvement projects, payment 14, AIP 346001-40 2019 Taxiway C. Helms and Associates, the amount of $1,536.23. We've got payment number 16, AIP 346001 39-2018 Master Layout Plan, Helms and Associates, for the amount of $33,357.80, and payment for reconstruction of the GA apron, Helms and Associates, $1,925.74. Possible approval, and authorize the city manager to sign the payment request to Helms and Associates for the work on the airport projects. Since we've got no Rich here tonight, Lynn, tell us about that.
Okay, all of these are active projects, and they were all approved by the airport board last week. The one thing I do want to highlight is Taxiway C this summer as it starts. Unfortunately, we will have to close down the primary runway probably for a 3-week period. However, we have the secondary runway 1735, which is used during the summer for commercial service, so it shouldn't interrupt commercial service at all.
Any questions for Lynn? Otherwise, I'll take a motion for the approval and authorization.
Move to approve all three payments.
A motion from Johnson. I know who you sound like today, Dave. Second from Bunceness. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Remley?
Aye.
Lunsman?
Aye.
Reif?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Bunceness?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Rux?
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman?
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the change order payment for the Klein Street Storm Sewer Improvements. Possible approval of change order number 2 in the amount of $397,662.57, and payment number 3 in the amount of $819,688.62 to B&B Contracting for work on the Klein Street Storm Sewer Improvement Project. Robin, tell us about that.
Well, there's a little bit of seating restoration that we need to complete on this project. The change order is primarily due to the fact that we added an additional block on the north end between 2nd and 3rd Avenue North. That is one section that actually equipment broke through as we were doing the work, so I'm glad we did complete that portion. And of course, we know that the project was slowed due to the weather this year, and they were able to fight their way through it to the credit of the contractor. It was a difficult year to do any kind of work on a storm sewer, especially one that size, because they were pumping every time we got a little rain. That carries the majority of the water from town. So they worked very hard to keep that thing dry enough so they could work in it. So we recommend the payment and the change order, and we will finish this up in the spring.
Can I get a motion for those payments?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Rux and a second from Remley. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got approval of the bill list for December 9th, 2019, as shown in our packets. Looks like Northwestern Energy was already included this week, so there's no special additions this time. Can I get a motion to make those bill payments, please?
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Remley and a second from Rife. Does anyone have any questions before we take a roll call vote on that? Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Abstain.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Abstain. Motion does carry. Next, we've got the payroll approval for the pay period from November 24th, 2019 through December 7th, 2019, and the city's share of Social Security, old age, survivors insurance, retirement, health, and life insurance. Can I get a motion to make payroll payment, please?
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Johnson and a second from Remley. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Abstain.
Johnson,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the city manager's report. Lynn, what have you got for us tonight?
I have nothing this evening.
Does anyone have anything to add before we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion from, who was it? Was that you, Dave? Yes. Motion from Bunceness and a second from Lynn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.